With nearly all of you here having a science background, history and the importance of history is relegated from our thought process. It's not a personal drawback, but that's the way our education system makes us. The STEM. The moment we finish our 10th, we choose our subjects, and then the vertical is so stringent that we don't touch any of the art subjects, or the commerce people do not touch science. And then history, fine arts slowly moves away from us as we become more and more embroiled into our careers, which is based that we were science students. It's the way our education system functions. However, nothing stops us from reading and increasing our knowledge. History is not always remembering dates of dynasties and battles, but the essence of learning who we were to become what we are. Though today the Navy has shifted to the BTech curriculum, there was a time it wasn't always so, and art students also were commissioned and performed well in their careers. So there was a time when the fine arts was also considered in the Navy as a part and parcel. There were people who wrote very well on subjects like history. Today we write very well on subjects which are more contemporary. We write on strategies. We write on our war fighting capabilities. We write on the future. There was a time we wrote on our past. So Indian Navy pursued the science of arts at that time in its functioning. And one such endeavor was archiving our own history. The Indian Navy set up the Naval History Division, presently located in Delhi, soon to be moved to Goa. It was set up in 1968 in the aftermath of the Indo-Pak War of 65, with the sole intention of recording and collating and archiving the war records. While they did that job, and everybody felt that they were doing a good job at it, the cell became more and more established in collecting and archiving data of the Navy. It was placed under the Directorate of Naval Operations, so that whatever was coming, documentation coming to the operations would directly be sent for storing in the Naval History Cell, and that could be used later when we wanted to revisit our history. It has more than 2 lakh documents from the 1970s, including classified documents of the 1971 war. So the NHD is a small office. Mostly when you go there, all you see is a lot of documents, papers, books. We have Captain Pradyumn Joshi here in our midst, who also was once the OIC. We have Commander Kalesh Mohan, who was the OIC there. All did a fine job in collating various documentations. You never know when, what is it that you require to refer. And these people kept these documents. Now we are going a step ahead by digitizing all these documents so that it's available at the click of a mouse to whichever computers that you're sitting, at least the unclassified part of it. They're also going through a large declassification process of papers before 75, which would be then transferred to MOD History, Ministry of Defense History Division, so that they are available for research and writing of more books and analysis. One of the primary roles of the Naval History Division is to provide information to the Naval History Project, Now the Naval History Project is an ad hoc organization or a team set up every time the Navy wanted to bring out its history books. I'll be coming to that. So the Naval History Division collates the information for a certain period, provides it to the officer in charge of the Naval History Project, who sifts through the enormous data, filters information, and writes the history of the Indian Navy for a decade or for 15 years as per the stipulated time which he is tasked with. When NHP is set up at periodic intervals so that we can come out with our history. Next is this Maritime History Society, for which right now I'm the additional director of. Why did we start a society? When I say society in the legal terms, it's a non-government organization which is there for researching. So there was this article in a newspaper written by a Western journalist who criticized that India, with its vast coastline and a rich maritime heritage, did not have a research center where people could delve into the past and write about it. So Vice Admiral Nawati, that time Rear Admiral, Fleet Commander West, took it as an affront and went to the CNC and he said, please give me the funds, I want to start this. So it was in 1978, with a sum of about 40 lakhs, the MHS was set up. At that time, the MHS was unique in the entire country. There were no colleges teaching maritime history. There were no courses. MHS was the one such institution which was specifically put up for maritime history of the country, not just the Indian Navy. That was one of its designated roles, but of the country. And the society has done a yeoman's job. It has brought out 21 publications so far on the maritime heritage of India, ranging from Cholas, your Marathas, sea forts, buildings, a wide plethora of subjects where we had researchers coming from outside, renowned personnel, collaborating with the society, writing the books, and the book is published by MHS and put on sale. So you could go to the MHS website, which got launched just today. After I joined it, I wanted to revamp and make it much more Gen Z. So on that, you could order the books which are placed there. All of them are interesting glimpses into our past, including the Indian Navy. Now, today we have a few more institutions that teach maritime history, somewhere in the graduation and the postgraduate or the doctoral levels, but still it is not where we would like it to be. So we still function and we still collaborate in delving into the past and coming out. We also have a gallery of artifacts in the MHS. So ships, when they get decommissioned, send some artifacts from them to us for safekeeping and for exhibition. So we have a small gallery where, let's say, the 1961 liberation of Goa war, we have the guns used by the Portuguese which were captured by the Indian sailors there. We have a book more than 700 years old called the Malamni Poti, Gujarati seafarers who traversed between the Indian coast and the African coast would maintain a log of their voyages. So many seafarers, we have one book which we are getting, we have two books. One we have translated and released a translation of it online, and the second one is undergoing translation. Fantastic amount of knowledge in these books. We encourage research, and if feasible, we fund it also for researchers, scholars to write more about the maritime heritage of India. The present tasks: we are the coordinating agency for the National Maritime Heritage Complex, a project driven by the PMO worth about 4,500 crores coming up in Gujarat next to the archaeological site of Lothal, which has the first tidal dock from the Indus Valley civilization times. So near that, this heritage complex is coming up, and there is a Navy gallery. Out of the 14 galleries which are there, there's a Navy gallery which we are spearheading. There are galleries on lighthouse, cholas. Each of the coastal states will have their gallery to showcase. There will be maritime theme parks. There will be a huge underwater aquarium. It's one of a kind in the world, not just India. So if you're following Twitter, the tweets have started coming as we put naval artifacts, guns, aircraft. We are transporting an entire ship to that place, which will be a walk-through museum for people to come see lives on board ship. Like you have Pralay out here, that one will be a live model. We have IL-38, huge aircraft. We are also coordinating a stitch ship project. India had this unique tradition of building ships, boats, dhows, without using metal in them, no nails. It would be stitched together. Somehow that tradition has died down with modern shipping and metal ships coming up. So again, another PMO-driven project. We are making one dhow stitch ship which will sail from the west coast to Oman and later on sail from the east coast to Vietnam or Cambodia, and then put up as an exhibition piece at the NMHC. Other than that, we consult for movies, do their research. We are writing now a Maritime Heritage of India book for the Ministry of Information and Broadcast. Now coming to the history books. Indian Navy is a unique service in maintaining its history. Neither Army nor the Air Force maintain their official history. The Army has got regimented history, but nothing as Army as a whole. The Air Force has people who write for the Air Force. Since they are visible and information is there, none of their own write it, or a few retired personnel write bits and pieces, but do not have an official version of their own history. The Indian Navy has its history documented right from 1945. So the first two books, Under Two Ensign and The Blueprint to Blue Water, was written by Rear Admiral Satinder Singh. In fact, these books were initially written on his own, and then the Navy thought, why not adopt these books and then set the tradition of writing and archiving our own history. So it followed with 1965 to 75, transition to Triumph, transition to Eminence, 76 to 1990, and the transition to Guardianship. These three books were written by Vice Admiral G.M. Hiranandani, and such was his dedication that he took 15 years or so, 12 years, to write these three books till his last breath. While finishing the last book, the man sadly passed away. And then we have the Indian Navy 2001 to 2010, which was written by Vice Admiral Anup Singh, of which I was also a small part. Now, these history books, why are they important? For one, these are primary sources of information. When I say primary sources, it's the Indian Navy publishing its own account of history, unclassified information. So anybody researching does not have to treat it as a secondary source. Anybody researching goes to the books and finds out what they need to and cites it as a primary source. These books are all available online. So I've had them put on the Indian Navy website where you could just browse through. You just Google the name, you'll come to the PDF. And I have put the downloadable PDF and searchable PDFs so that you just have to put one control left, type in a word, and that word will appear throughout the document and you could find what you're looking for easily. Though I would prefer somebody turning the pages and going through the books. The information which is there in these books is phenomenal. So when we are starting in 1945, which were the units in the Navy which were commissioned at that time, which were the units that we decommissioned, the reasons of doing things the way we did is clearly enunciated in these books, where different authors have written the reasons, the hows and whys and wheres, the start of various branches, the closing down of some branches in the Navy, and how they evolved thereafter. We had different names, for instance, we had different stripes. Today, all of us wear similar stripes, except for the surgeons who wear a red cloth. But earlier, the engineering branch wore a different color, a green, a yellow, electrical branch. The supply and secretariat branch, which today is the logistics branch, was different. How did we start the hydrography branch? When did we get our first aircraft? You see the Alizés, one standing outside. When did they come? Why did we choose the Alizés for flying off the Vikrant, which was the first air squadron commissioned in the Indian Navy, which was the first submarine? I think that makes for fantastic reading for us to know about our own organization. Why are we the way we are today? Is all given in these books. So it makes for good reading, it makes for good writing when you research these books and find the information. They are a veritable treasure trove of filtered information. All the information goes through multiple levels of checking. If you have missed something, if you have not written something. So I would recommend that all of you just download your personal copies, and whenever you need something, what happened 10 years back, what happened 50 years back, what happened 75 years back, refer the books. It will tell you what the Navy did in those times. The seventh book. I'm the author, the co-author of this book. So I will just take to how I did this book, since the previous authors, except for Vice Admiral Anup Singh, are not there. So delving into how we did this book would probably give you an insight as to what all you can look forward from this book and the other books. It was in 2018 when I was doing my higher command course that I got a call from Commodore K. Snow, retired, another eminent historian of the Navy. And he said, I've been ordered to write the next history book. Will you come and work with me? So usually after high command, we get posted in staff appointments. But I had this passion of writing. And I said, yes, sir, I would like to collaborate. He said, take 2 days, think over it. I said, 2 minutes, I thought over it, let's work. So 2018, I got onto this book, but the initial thing was collaborating with Admiral Anup Singh on the previous history book, which was released on Navy Day 2018. So the last 6 months I was working with it. And thereafter we started off in 2019 on this book. So the first year in 2019 went in setting ourselves up, informing the environment that we need information, we will be visiting, getting the permissions, getting the approvals to see classified files, notings, books, information, where it was to dig it up. So we sort of needed a carte blanche approval to go where we wanted, when we wanted to look into the history. So most of 19 went off in that. And just when we thought we started getting the information, COVID struck. Everything was put to a stop. We couldn't visit offices because offices were closed. We couldn't get information. So we sort of slowed down. but after the initial phases of COVID started dwindling, after the lockdown, first lockdown period, even when transportation was not available, I remember thumbing rides with CNCs and CNSs who were traveling in their own service aircraft. Sir, can I travel with you? I need to go to Delhi. The big men that they were, they allowed me, and that's how I used to get to places, visit the offices which were open and collected information. This book has got many firsts to it. I won't say all the ideas were mine, but it was brainstormed as a team. This was the first time we hired a research team. So information for this book was a plethora. It was available on the net, on social media, which started from Indian Navy social media, started from 2016 onwards. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and articles, everything. We started coming out onto the social media. And we needed a team to trawl that, while we in the service, Commodore Kesnor and one more officer, would trawl through the service side of it through files and books. So the end result was the amount of information which we got from the net. We ended up making 3 volumes of a book called Social Media Book of Reference. So I won't say 100%, but at least 90% of anything which appeared about the Indian Navy has been printed on these books. There are only 2 copies, one in NHD and one with the CNS. For any reference, articles, journals, websites, including our own website, websites of other government agencies where they have mentioned the Indian Navy, all these were trawled. And this was also the first time that the Navy chose somebody other than a retired admiral to author this. It was nothing but the Navy showing its confidence in the younger generation to take on the responsibility of writing and addressing the capabilities that we all have. We had a team to filter. The earlier books had just the author and probably one officer to help him, and the NHD, of course. But here the NHP constituted of at least 4 officers, generally picked up, hand-picked for their writing and their research skills. So we had them because the amount of information was so huge. And remember, this is the closest to the decade. We are writing from 2011 to 21, and this is 23. The information in the book is still current. So while we can archive it, it could also provide a lot of input to adversaries. So this went through a large sifting process by the naval intelligence, who saw it, cleared, rewrote, and that's how the information has come. The process I followed while writing this book was what we did, how we did it, where did we do it, and when did we do it. If I could answer these 4 questions, the story would come on its own in the book. Since it's the history of the Indian Navy and the Indian Navy is putting it out as the first person, we left out the who did it unless inescapable. Otherwise, each and every one officer has contributed in building what we are, and all their names coming in would take up half the book probably. We hired domain experts in geopolitics to run through what we had written on geopolitics, the preface, the first chapters, the operations, the foreign interactions. We hired HarperCollins, one of the leading publishing agencies in India, for editing, converting the text into more readable, less military naval jargon, and making it readable for the civilian, in fact. We trawled all sources, as I said, files and directorates, the Press Information Bureau, military journals, interviews we conducted, the MOD annual reports, government websites, and these are just a few of it that we did. R&D, industrial units, shipyards, old articles for catching some thread with which we could go and dig up. retired officers were a huge help, and the Indian Navy website. I would really recommend all of you to visit that website when you're searching for any information. It's got a very good gallery and a good source of, again, primary information. I'm sorry you will not be able to read it much, but the contents, the flow of the book, what I have given here in these 6 pages is just the first level of subheadings, the chapter and then the subheadings. What I haven't mentioned here, that there are subheadings, sub-subheadings, and in rare cases sub-sub-subheadings. So that's just showing the intricate level of handling the topics that we covered in this book. So if you're reading through it, there is an entire section on how INA shifted here. How did we start the BTech? So I guess you're all sitting here, you could read up what happened when. How did this project come up? The grand auditorium that we are sitting there. It's all mentioned in the book, one way or the other. So this is the information we today exercise with many different countries' navies. When did we start? At what level have we reached now? Check the book. If a branch has evolved, what did it do in the last 10 years? An introduction of what it did earlier. The training chapter has got every school listed there in it. What the school has done, what the training curriculum has changed. HR, the human resources chapter, section, has all the policies that we've changed. What happened? Why did we? What are the promotion challenges? Why did we change time schedules? The sailors. Whatever happened in this decade, we have covered in the book. Other than that, this book took a total of, I would say, 19, 20, 21, 22, 4 years, which itself is quick time for writing 700 pages. Pushed, it was a whole of Navy effort. I won't say just because my name is there on the cover. It was a whole of Navy approach where everybody contributed their bit. Whenever we went to someone, INA has written and sent, they sent nice photographs. So whenever we asked for it, information came, and from that information we asked questions, more answers came in, and that's how the book came about. So if you're looking at finding something, as I said, book is available on the net, download it, put a Control F and search. I repeat this because it was my endeavor to put in as much information in an easy flowing narrative as I could. But if there are gaps, I would definitely like the feedback. So you have my mail, you could get my number, you could just send me a word that this is what I found or did not find. Maybe we'll cover it as feedback in the next book, which will come up. As I said, the Indian Naval Academy, a section we had written, the growth and trajectory of the Navy's training and training establishments, of which INA was the first part, and quite a bit has been written. And I'm sure you'll find it an interesting read. I have finished, and I think we could take on questions, if any.
Good evening, sir. I am Cadet Suresh Kumar Singh of 4th term from Eagle Squadron. My question to you is, Admiral Pereira has given high priority to sports. How important is it in naval life?
Good question. Do you know that in the academy, a large amount of time is spent on outdoor activities? Why do we need outdoor activities? Why not we be like any other college, attend classes, have, go home and study at home? But we pack it up so much because a naval personnel is expected to build camaraderie. And what best place that you could build camaraderie than on the sports field? the camaraderie you build in classrooms or the friends that you make here, the postmates that you have a different meaning. But what you do in the sports field is where you build bonds. So when you go back to ships, you will find that we are laying an equal stress once you go there also. So we have sporting events, we have competitions where officers, men, everybody partakes. The spirit while taking part in these championships is immense, as good as inter-squadron events out here. Each ship puts its best foot forward. Other than that, the Indian Navy has got its sports branch, INS CCB, where we have Olympic gold winners. Where did they come from? Mohammed Anas, Tejinder Singh Toor, we have sailing greats, Abhilash Tomy, Donde, adventure activists. We had MS Kohli, commander, who was one of the first to go on Mount Everest. The Navy gives equal importance to sports also. So Admiral Pereira was right when he insisted that we should have sporting fields, because he understood the bond which is built between an officer and man. I hope I have answered the question.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Good evening, sir. I'm correct, Rupal Mishra.
Hands. It's such a big audience. Where are you?
Sir.
Yeah.
Good evening, sir. I'm correct, Rupal Mishra from 38 NOC Regular, Fighter Squadron. My question to you is, Admiral R.L. Pereira's personality was well felt through today, right from the ship to his time at NDA and then being the Admiral. Was all his characteristic a natural charisma, or it was developed through his career in Indian Navy?
Beautiful. I wish I could go back and just get my diary from there, where I have written a question when I was researching Admiral Pereira. Are leaders born, or are they made, or is leadership thrust upon us because we are officers? Personally, I feel it's a mix of all three. So, as I said in the talk, he had the good upbringing of values from his family, which we carry. What are we all? We are all a mixture of the pot of culture all over India. So we bring what our cultures, our homes, we bring that into the Navy, where we are honed into what we should be. We've been selected for certain leadership qualities which can be further polished once we get into the service. So while he had some of these qualities, he developed many more during his service. Since he was placed, if you notice, he was the Deputy Commandant of NDA during the war year 1971. So where many other leaders, Admiral Soman, Admiral Neelkant Krishnan, Admiral Kurvilla, all these people made their names on the battlefield. He was there in NDA. He said that he missed the war, but he took that opportunity to train cadets for future wars. So he developed himself. He had a set of rules which he brought it out on the cadets and the men he served. So every one of us, as we go up in service, we will define a level of values for ourselves. The Navy expects a minimum standard, and we are expected to do above that. So leadership is a trait which will keep growing. As you grow in service, look at your role models. How do they do? How do we do? Your DIVOs here, your Scotties here, the officers here are all selected and sent here. Okay, so they have to imbibe, they have to inspire. And that's how we grow. We see a trait today, we admire it, and we try to imbibe it. And that's the way it was with Admiral Ronnie. He grew with the service and he made others grow with him.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening, sir. My name is Cadet Shaurya Singh from the 37 NOC Extended Course from Daredevil Squad. My question to you is, why is Admiral Pereira called the architect of the modern Indian Navy?
Okay, did you read that somewhere? When you say the architect of Indian Navy, you're talking from the time he was the CMS?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So when we say architect of the Indian Navy, I would actually go back way before to the people who were there in the 40s, who made the first plan paper, which said we need destroyers, we need cruisers, we need submarines, we need aircraft carriers. They had a vision, they shaped the Navy. And from then everybody carried on that vision. And today we are where we are, and not that we have reached what we have to be. We still are planning to be a 200-ship Navy. So that's the vision for the future. So each one in his own time has been an architect. So as I covered probably in the last, many of the things that Admiral Pereira did are still in vogue today. Admirals have come, admirals have retired. Some of the things they did have evolved or have stopped completely. But some things which they put in force are going on even now. For example, when the academy was made, I come from 52nd Naval Academy course, which was in Mandavi, and my squadron was Rajput Division of the destroyer squadron. But here when it came, we were growing. It was a larger academy. We had just 350, 400 cadets at that time. Now you are 650, I believe. So we are growing. We are getting more. So the squadrons had to be renamed. Now that is legacy. So the people, the officers who were there, who would have thought of it and were the architects of today's squadrons and the battalions which are there. So everybody is an architect. And Admiral Pereira, as per his position while he rose in the ranks, did many things which were thought of and which lasted the process of time. So yes, he was an architect in his own way. As I said, the APSO sonar we still use, the Navy Children's School, the WAU. These were some. INS Chilka, he was the one who commissioned INS Chilka, the training establishment for all the sailors. Going strong today. The Agnipath scheme, INS Chilka. So we all made something, and then each one of us contribute to its evolution later, as will all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening, sir. Sir, I am Midshipman Kapish Nathani, and my question for you is, with the Navy transforming into a technically oriented service, would Admiral Pereira consider it okay to compromise a bit on bearing and behavior for good performance? Is it more important to be technically sound or to have a good military bearing?
I'm so sorry. Just because of the mic, could you read it a little slow?
Yes. With the Navy transforming into a technically oriented service, would Admiral Pereira consider it okay to compromise a bit on bearing and behavior for good performance? Is it more important to be technically sound or to have a good military bearing?
Simple answer. He wouldn't bend. He was very steadfast in his thought process that a military person has to be differentiated from a non-military person. Okay, this is something I say, we don't just call them civilians or anything. We are military, they are non-military. There has to be a differentiation. If you are telling you are technologically competent, so is a graduate from IIT or even VIT or any BTech college. What is it that differentiates you, us, from that college student? And trust me, he is also into nation building. It's not just us carrying the mantle of the nation on our shoulders, each and every citizen. The BMC Safai Wala, keeping the streets clean, is also a part of nation building. So what is it that will differentiate you? That is military bearing. So that is where we differentiate ourselves. We stand proud, we talk free, we are knowledgeable, we read, and we have to imbibe these. If you are not, you have to do it. The service expects you to do that. So there was no chance that he would bend on military bearing, grooming, value system. So once you come into what are the current values that we have: duty, honor, courage. 3 values which probably, if you tell IIT Mumbai, okay, our thing is duty, honor, courage, where will he innovate? Where will he be ingenious in his thinking? Okay, this is for us. And this is what differentiates us from them. That educational background is our strength. But what differentiates us is the uniform and how we carry it with us. So, in short, he wouldn't have bent, and I think we shouldn't either.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening, sir.
Yeah. Oh, that corner is quite a inquisitive corner.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
I'm Cadet Sandhita Patnaik from Fighter Squadron, 37 NOC Extended First Term. My question to you is, how has Admiral Pereira's remarkable career in the Indian Navy left an incredible and undeniable mark on the future of Indian Navy?
The last part again. What has it done?
How has it left an undeniable and an incredible mark on the future of Indian Navy?
Of course, it has. Each of us, once we are commissioned, have a role to play. And our role, how much ever we think is insignificant at that time, will definitely leave a mark on many people. You know, on a ship, in a unit, when you go, there are people watching you. There is the sailors, your juniors, your seniors. We are such a close-knit community that, in fact, in the Navy it is said, reputation precedes the person. Before you go somewhere, your reputation would have reached there. Good, bad, ugly, whatever it is. So we are such a small-knit community. At a certain seniority, you tend to know most of the people. 10,000 odd officers. You would have served with the frequent transfers, you would have served with many of them. So each one of us make a mark on somebody or the other. We may think we don't, but somebody is watching. So his remarkable career, as I said, he thought every promotion he got was the last he is going to make because of his tempestuous nature, because of the way he was forthright in saying things. He didn't mind the consequences. He was not thinking, will this affect my future, will this affect my promotion? He just did what he felt was right. And whatever he did flowed down because somebody was watching him. There are 2 ways of seeing a person. One, you see a person who's rising up the career chain and you say, okay, I also want to rise like him. 2, you see a person for his attributes and you say, I want to be a person like him. So this is where you leave a mark on somebody. Admiral Pereira was no different. He is a great man. We are talking today. He didn't know he was great. He didn't do his actions. Since he wanted to be great. Okay. So the mark he left was those 1,500 cadets who went on and spread it to, must be few more hundreds of people, who all talked about Admiral Pereira and his value system. He didn't want a multi-level marketing architecture to go down about his traits. He did it, people liked it, people followed it. So yes, he left an indelible mark by people who wanted to learn from him. And that's the way it should be.
Thank you, sir.
This corner, all those guys who raised their hands, they're not yet slept.
Good evening, sir. I'm Cadet Aditya Sharma, 38 NOC Coast Guard, Radio Squad. My question to you is, what values of Admiral Ronnie Pereira made him unforgettable?
Come again, just hold the mic a little away from you.
So my question to you is, what values of Admiral Ronnie Pereira made him unforgettable?
Why?
What values of Admiral Ronnie Pereira made him... So what values of Admiral Ronnie Pereira made him unforgettable?
So the question is, what values of Admiral Ronnie Pereira made him unforgettable?
I got it. I thought the whole presentation was that. His values were honesty, integrity, military bearing, good manners. Of course, he had his explosive anger and he knew it, that it was his weakness. He had, forthrightness irrespective of consequences. The whole value system is huge. We can write adjectives for each of us when we write our ACRs or when we describe ourselves. So it's a plethora of things: determined, responsible, dedicated. So a whole lot of things. So particular values, if you take, those are values which you would like to imbibe. Since he had so many values, it is the values that you think that you need to follow. Those are the values that you would see. So he didn't root for growing up to become the CNS. I think that's an admirable value to follow. Do your work sincerely and the rewards will follow, as I said. So it is what you would like to imbibe. Those are the values that he left for the Navy, from the plethora of values that he had.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening, sir. I am Midshipman Piyush Sharma, and my question to you is that during his time as Deputy Commandant of the National Defence Academy, when he downgraded the cadet's blazer to a blue to avoid people doubting if it was just or not, was it fair to the cadet when he actually might have been deserving of that award?
Actually, he writes in the book that cadet was the one who wrote the autobiography, and he himself writes it wasn't fair. So Mike Balla, the cadet, later Brigadier Mike Balla, used to visit the Admiral's house very frequently. Though he was a cadet, he had become quite close to the Admiral and his wife, Phyllis Pereira. And he would go on almost all weekends. Instead of going on liberty, he would spend the time there. And the Admiral, he told the Admiral that this wasn't fair. If I was recommended for a blazer, you downgraded me to a blue. So he said, would you have liked it if you got the blazer and the cadet next says that is because you are close to the Admiral and you didn't deserve it. But whereas having a full blue and the blazer being above, nobody is going to say, you've not given him the best, you've given him good. Okay, so that was his justification. It was, and Mike Balla accepted it. He said it is right. Though as cadets we all want that torch. We want the blue, we want the half blue, we want the blazer. But if you're not, you will definitely get it if you are capable. And it is not just that one term. You have multiple disciplines where you get it. In this particular hockey, he did not give the blazer. But Mike Balla had full blues in 3 other disciplines. Okay, so he was an achiever and he did not take it amiss. And he did put it up, and the Admiral did say, I may not have been just to you, but it is for your own good.
Thank you, sir.
Sir, Sir, I'm Kevin Departure Singh of the 4th term from Legal Scholar. Sir, you explained in your talk that Admiral ensured absolute strictness in cases of discipline. He awarded 21 for every time. Sir, are traits of Admiral R.L. Pereira still relevant in today's routine in academy?
How many restrictions have you run?
Well, 7 at least, sir.
Which term are you in?
It's a 4th term.
Okay. So I joined Naval Academy in July '93. 7 days from me coming in, I didn't even have my uniform, I was still in the white PTs, I got my 7 extra drills. And when I left in 6th term, with 7 days left for the POP, I got 7 restrictions. I think the restriction system is still running. And we do get our ice strips taken, and we don't know what number they're going to fill in that. So it does happen. And he was, I would say, a little more over the top with his 21-4. But imagine, 21 is RWL nowadays?
Yes, sir.
Is still there? At least in my time, 21 was RWL, relegation warning list.
Yes, sir.
So by giving a 21-4, he already put the cadet on his best behavior for the rest of the term. So that sorted it out. The 4 was the sweetening by going for Singar, which was happening on Sundays. It would take a total of almost 8 hours in full FS pack to go up to Singar, come back. At the end of it, leave the Sunday, even the Monday is gone. Next day. Okay. So that definitely is a, what to say, good hold over cadets.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening, sir. I am Cadet Rahul Sharma of NOC Extended First Term from Cheetah Squadron. My question to you is, how did Admiral Ronnie Pereira see the future of Indian Navy, sir?
Oh, wow. That's a damn good question. Very nice. He was a visionary, as I said. He was a visionary. He knew what the Navy had to be. You know, there are certain guidelines you get. There are plans, there's staff work. When you're an admiral, people think over it. You have meetings, you have conferences. What should be our future? How should we address a certain threat? How should we be prepared for a certain contingency? So there are all these thought processes. So everybody plans for a better Navy than what we are now. That's how we keep building on our capabilities. If one ship is getting decommissioned, the next ship which is getting commissioned is probably 10 times more capable than this ship. That's how we plan. So as CNS, he would have also planned what the future should be. Through the normal staff process, we have things like commanders' conferences, you have OPEC, I mean, your officers here would tell it you in their discussions. So there is a planning process on everything. This is not just the capability. You look at manpower, you look at their promotion, you look at